Good morning, and it is a read aloud time. We're going to start right here where we left off with Harry Potter. I want you to take a moment and just remind yourself what the last thing you remember happening in the story was. So, as we know, Harry had just finished his Quidditch game. They won really fast, and Snape didn't seem to be happy about it, but Harry definitely was. So that's where we're going to pick up the story today. So get your minds ready to picture and make a movie of the book. All right? Harry left the changing room alone sometime later to take his Nimbus 2000 back to the broom shed. He couldn't ever remember feeling happier. He'd done something to be proud of now. No one could say that he was just a famous name anymore. The evening air had never smelled so sweet. He walked over the damp grass, reliving the last hour in his head, which was a happy blur. Gryffindors running to lift him on their shoulders. Ron and Hermione in the distance, jumping up and down. Ron cheering through a heavy nosebleed. Harry, pause. Why was Ron's nose bleeding? Let's see if we can remember. What happened that would be a reason for Ron's nose to bleed? Well, he watched the Quidditch game, and what happened when he was watching the Quidditch game? That's right, he got in a fight with Malfoy. So that must be why his nose is bleeding. Harry had reached the shed. He leaned against the wooden door and looked up at Hogwarts with its windows glowing red in the setting sun. Gryffindor in the lead. He'd done it. He'd shown Snape. And speaking of Snape, a hooded figure came swiftly down the front steps of the castle, clearly not wanting to be seen. It walked as fast as possible toward the forbidden forest. Harry's victory faded from his mind as he watched. He recognized the figure's prowling walk. Snape, sneaking into the forest while everyone else was at dinner? What was going on? Harry jumped back on his Nimbus 2000 and took off. Gliding silently over the castle, he saw Snape enter the forest at a run. He followed. The trees were so thick that he couldn't see where Snape had gone. He flew in a few circles lower and lower, brushing the top branches of the trees until he heard voices. He glided towards them and landed noiselessly in a towering beech tree. Pause. Do you think you can think thumbs up, thumbs down? Do you think that Harry should be listening to Professor Snape? Interesting. He climbed carefully along one of the branches, holding tight to his broomstick, trying to see through the leaves. Below, in a shadowy clearing, stood Snape, but he wasn't alone. Quirrell was there too. Harry couldn't make out the look on his face, but he was stuttering worse than ever. Harry strained to catch what they were saying. Don't know why you'd want to meet here of all places, Severus. Oh, I thought we'd keep this private, said Snape, his voice icy. Students aren't supposed to know about the Sorcerer's Stone, after all. Whoa! So there we go. Snape is proving that he knows what that is, right? Harry leant forward. Quirrell was mumbling something. Snape interrupted him. Have you found out yet how to get past that beast of Hagrid's yet? But Severus, You don't want me as your enemy, Quirrell, said Snape, taking a step towards him. I don't know what you... You know perfectly well what I mean. An owl hooted loudly, and Harry nearly fell out of the tree. He steadied himself in time to hear Snape say, Your little bit of hocus pocus. I'm waiting. But I don't... Very well, Snape cut in. We'll have another little chat soon, when you've had time to think things over and decided where your loyalties lie. He threw his cloak over his head and strode out of the clearing. It was almost dark now, but Harry could see Quirrell standing quite still, as though he were petrified. So petrified, the word petrified, to figure out what that means, let's go back and read this sentence again. It was almost dark now, but Harry could see Quirrell standing quite still, as though he were petrified. Well, obviously, does Quirrell like Snape? Let's think. No. In fact, Quirrell is pretty scared of a lot of things, right? So when you're standing quite still and you're kind of scared, maybe that's a way of saying you're like super scared, like so scared you would like not even move. Harry, where have you been? Hermione squeaked. We won! You won! We won! Shouted Ron, thumping Harry on the back. And I gave Malfoy a black eye, and Neville tried to take on Crabbe and Goyle single-handed. He's still out cold, but Madame Pomfrey says he'll be all right. Talk about showing Slytherin. Everyone's waiting for you in the common room. We're having a party. Fred and George stole some cakes and stuff from the kitchen. Never mind that now, said Harry breathlessly. Let's find an empty room. You wait till you hear this. He made sure Peeves wasn't inside before shutting the door behind them. Then he told them what he'd seen and heard. So we were right. It is the Sorcerer's Stone, and Snape's trying to get a forced Quirrell to help him get it. He asked if he knew how to get past Fluffy, and he said something about Quirrell's hocus pocus. I reckon there were other things guarding the stone apart from Fluffy. Loads of enchantment, probably. And Quirrell would have done some anti-dark arts spell, which Snape needs to break through. So you mean the stone's only a Snape? Oh, I'm sorry. So you mean the stone's only a safe? Excuse me. So you mean the stone's only safe as long as Quirrell stands up to Snape? Said Hermione in alarm. It'll be gone by next Tuesday, said Ron. Why do you think Ron says the stone's going to be gone by next Tuesday? You can say it out loud here or post it in the comment. All right, we're on the next chapter. We still have a little reading aloud time left, so I'm going to go ahead and start. And the name of this chapter is Chapter 14, Norbert, the Norwegian Ridgeback. You can look at this picture, you can decide, what do you think that is? I can tell that's an egg. What do you think that is? Quirrell, however, must have been braver than they thought. In the weeks that followed, he did seem to get paler and thinner, but it didn't look as though he'd cracked yet. Every time they passed the third-floor corridor, Harry, Ron, and Hermione would press their ears to the door to check that Fluffy was still growling inside. Snape was sweeping about in his usual bad temper, which surely meant that the stone was still safe. Whenever Harry passed Quirrell these days, he gave him an encouraging sort of smile, and Ron had started to telling people off for laughing at Quirrell's stutter. Hermione, however, had more in her mind than the Sorcerer's Stone. She had started drawing up revision timetables and color-coding all her notes. Harry and Ron wouldn't have minded, but she kept nagging them to do the same. Hermione, the exams are ages away. 10 weeks, Hermione snapped. That's not ages. That's like a second to Nicholas Flamel. But we're not all 600 years old, Ron reminded her. Anyway, what are you revising for? You already know it all. What am I revising for? Are you mad? You realize we need to pass these exams to get to the second year? They're very important. I should have started studying a month ago. I don't know what's gotten into me. Unfortunately, the teachers seem to be thinking along the same lines as Hermione. Oh, pictures. So I'm going to let you look at these. This picture while Miss Kendlebury continues to read on this page. They piled so much homework on them that the Easter holidays were nearly as much fun as the Christmas ones. It was hard to relax with Hermione next to you reciting the 12 uses of dragon's blood or practicing wand movements. Moaning and yawning, Harry and Ron spent most of their free time in the library with her, trying to get through all their extra work. I'll never remember this, Ron burst out one afternoon, throwing his quill down and looking longingly out the library window. It was the first really fine day they had had in months. The sky was clear, forget-me-not blue, and there was a feeling in the air of summer coming. Harry, who was looking up Dittany in 1,000 Magical Herbs and Fungi, didn't look up until he heard Ron say, Hagrid, what are you doing in the library? Hagrid shuffled into view, hiding something behind his back. He looked very out of place in his moleskin overcoat. "Just looking," he said in a shifty voice that got their interest at once. "And what are you lot up to?" He looked suddenly suspicious. "You're not still looking for Nicholas Flamel, are you?" "Oh, we found out about who he was ages ago," said Ron impressively. "And we know that and we know what that dog's guarding. It's the sorceress Shh!" Hagrid looked around quickly to see if anyone was listening. "Don't go shouting about it. What's the matter with you?" "There are a few things we wanted to ask you, as a matter of fact," said Harry. "About what's guarding the stone, apart from Fluffy." "Shh!" said Hagrid again. "Listen, come and see me later. I'm not promising I'll tell you anything, mind, but don't go rabbiting about in here. Students aren't supposed to know, and I think I've told you. They'll think I've told you." "See you later, then," said Harry. Hagrid shuffled off. "What do you think he was hiding behind his back?" said Hermione thoughtfully. "Do you think it had anything to do with the stone?" "I'm going to see what section he was in," said Ron, who'd have enough of working. He came back a minute later with a pile of books in his arms and slammed them down on the table. "Dragons," he whispered. "Hagrid was looking up stuff about dragons. Look at these. Dragon species of Great Britain and Ireland. From Egg to Inferno. A Dragon's Keeper Guide." "Hagrid's always wanted a dragon. He told me so the first time I ever met him," said Harry. "But it's against our laws," said Ron. "Dragon breeding was outlawed by the Warlocks Convention of 1709. Everyone knows that. It's hard to stop Muggles noticing us if we're keeping dragons in back garden. Anyway, you can't tame dragons. It's dangerous. You should see the burns Charlie's got off wild ones in Romania." "But there aren't any wild dragons. But aren't there wild dragons in Britain?" said Harry. "Of course there are. Common Welsh Green and Hebrians Blacks. The Ministry of Magic has a job hushing them up, I can tell you. Our lot have to keep putting spells on Muggles who spotted them to make them forget." "So what on earth is Hagrid up to?" said Hermione. "We're going to stop there today. I want you to make a prediction yourself. What do you think Hagrid is up to? Why is he looking up information about dragons? And we'll start there tomorrow.